In the heart of New England, amidst the rustling leaves and quaint towns, lies a tale that has chilled the bones of generations. A tale of a witch hunt. Not the kind with pointy hats and broomsticks, but one far darker, more sinister, and all too real. We're talking about the Salem Witch Trials, a name synonymous with paranoia, betrayal, and grave injustice. Remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more. It was here in the secluded corner of colonial America that fear festered, turning neighbor against neighbor, father against daughter, and finally sending 8 innocent souls to their demise on a fateful day, September 22nd, 1692. The darkest day in Salem, a day that would cast a long shadow over American history. It was a crisp autumn morning, the kind that paints the landscape in hues of gold and crimson and makes one feel the bite of winter on the breeze. But in Salem, the chill in the air wasn't just from the approaching cold. It was from the icy fingers of fear that had been gripping the town since the start of the year. For months, Salem Village, now known as Danvers, had been a cauldron of suspicion and dread. A group of young girls, their faces pale and eyes wild, had claimed to be afflicted by witchcraft. They writhed on the floor, contorted in impossible angles, and spoke in tongues that only the devil himself could understand. And the finger of blame pointed towards those the girls claimed had tormented them. In this strange game of cat and mouse, the cats were spectral, and the mice were mortal. Now let's meet the main players in this macabre drama. At the center stood the afflicted girls, their every whim and fancy taken as gospel. There was Abigail Williams, Ann Putnam Jr., Elizabeth Hubbard, and Mercy Lewis. Their accusations held the power to make or break, bless or damn. Then there were the judges, men of the cloth and magistrates who took on the role of arbiters of good and evil, their decisions guided by a mix of piety and fear. Reverend Samuel Parris, the village minister, was a key figure, his sermons fanning the flames of religious fervor. John Hathorne and Jonathan Corwin were the men of law, their duty to seek justice, but their vision clouded by the prevailing hysteria. Lastly, let's focus on those who found themselves on the wrong side of the accuser's gaze, a motley crew of individuals who became the face of fear. Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne were 2 impoverished women, their hard lives and questionable choices making them easy targets. Tituba, a slave from Barbados, was an outsider in a Puritan community, her dark skin and foreign roots fueling prejudice and suspicion. Rebecca Nurse, a pillar of the community, her piety and age making her initial immunity against accusations even more jarring when she fell from grace. George Burroughs, a man of the cloth, initially viewed as a saintly man, his downfall came when his theological views were deemed heretical. And John Proctor, a landowner with a troubled past, was trapped in a web of deceit and fear, unable to escape the clutches of his accusers. The events that unfolded were a complex interplay of fear, prejudice, and human fallibility. As the trials progressed, they became increasingly flawed. Many of the trials were conducted without solid evidence. Accusations were based on spectral evidence, meaning evidence based on dreams, visions, and the testimony of those who claim to have seen witches at their rituals. This type of evidence is considered unreliable and inadmissible in modern court proceedings. Also, the accused were not given proper legal representation and were denied the right to confront their accusers. Confessions were often coerced, extracted through sleep deprivation, stress, and sometimes physical abuse. These confessions were then used as primary evidence against the accused. The first executions of the Salem Witch Trials occurred on July 19, 1692. Bridget Bishop, a 41-year-old woman known for her wild behavior and contentious relationships with her neighbors, was the first to be put to death. She was accused of afflicting the young girls, using black magic, and even attending the Devil's Sabbath. The second execution was that of Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne, 2 destitute women who had become outcasts in the community. They were accused of afflicting the same young girls and were also believed to be in league with the devil. These early executions set the tone for the trials that followed. The accused had little chance of defending themselves, and the legal process was heavily influenced by fear and superstition rather than reason and evidence. In the weeks following the first executions, more and more people were accused of witchcraft, including respected members of the community, like Rebecca Nurse. However, despite the mounting evidence of injustice, the trials continued. That brings us to the most significant day in the saga, September 22nd, 1692. 8 more people were to be executed, taking the total to 19. Among them were Martha Corey, a God-fearing woman who openly criticized the trials, Mary Eastey, a well-respected member of the community, and John Proctor, a man ensnared in the trials due to his past. Each of these individuals was accused based on flimsy evidence, primarily the testimony of the afflicted girls. The trials were deeply flawed, characterized by coercion, hearsay, and a lack of due process. Yet the authorities pressed on, executing those deemed guilty without offering them a fair chance to defend themselves. The entire affair was a travesty of justice, driven by fear, prejudice, and the unchecked power of the accusers. As the executions approached, the townspeople began to question the validity of the trials. Even Governor William Phips intervened, commuting the sentences of some of the condemned. However, for the 8 who faced the gallows on September 22nd, it was too late. The damage was done. These individuals were sacrificed at the altar of fear, becoming martyrs for a cause they did not believe in. The events of September 22nd serve as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked fear and the importance of due process and the rule of law. The condemned were not given a fair trial, nor were they afforded the basic rights that we now associate with justice. Their stories are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Even in the darkest hours, they displayed courage, dignity, and a steadfast belief in their innocence. Martha Corey, a beacon of piety and reason, defended her faith and questioned the validity of the trials until her death. Mary Eastey, a pillar of the community, remained composed throughout her ordeal, advocating for justice and pleading for an end to the bloodshed. Alice Parker, a simple fisherwoman, faced her fate with grace, trusting in divine mercy to guide her through the turbulent waters of accusation. Mary Parker, a victim of circumstance, found herself ensnared in a web of fear and prejudice. Her story highlights the trial's capacity to destroy lives and families. Pudeator, a wealthy widow, met her fate with bravery, using her final moments to advocate for her own innocence and the rights of others. Wilmot Redd, a woman whose fiery spirit may have alienated some, was ultimately condemned for her individuality in a society that demanded conformity. Margaret Scott, a poor beggar, was accused based on flimsy grounds, showcasing how the trials exploited the vulnerabilities of the marginalized. Samuel Wardwell, a man who confessed and recanted, symbolized the pressure and moral dilemmas faced by those caught in the trial's vortex. Each of them faced their fate with a mixture of fear, anger, sadness, and defiance. They were ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, their humanity shining through in their final moments. The aftermath of these trials serves as a sobering reminder of the need for critical thinking, due process, and the protection of individual rights. The condemned, posthumously exonerated, stand as symbols of the dangers of mass hysteria and religious extremism. Their sacrifice paved the way for greater understanding and empathy in the face of difference. The events of September 22, 1692, continue to resonate in our collective memory. They remind us of the fragility of justice and the importance of remaining vigilant against the forces of intolerance and fear. The legacy of those who perished on that fateful day lives on, urging us to strive for a world where reason and compassion prevail over prejudice and superstition. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.